This episode was on March 13th. Welcome to the Polytopian Interviewer, where I interview people on their experiences and views on the Polytopia Discord community. I have Prophet and Flame with me today. How are you guys?
Doing good. It was a long day of work, but good to get off and do some podcasting now.
Yeah, I heard you haven't been in Polytopia in like 4 months.
Oh yeah, man. I honestly have not been thinking about this game for a bit. It was funny you brought it up. It was cracking me up. But yeah, the community's like awesome. Good to chat about it. And I know I have some fun stories. Do you want to jump in and give a quick intro, and then Flame can intro himself? I know some of the rookies don't know Flame, and me probably now.
Yeah, definitely. Please give your intro for some people that don't.
All right. I'm Prophet, banned on literally every damn community in this game. Former #1 ranked player in Global on Polychamps. Former League 1 1v1er. Probably most known for taking over the Cosmonaut team and building a dynasty out of it. And then also the ringleader of the Cosmonaut cheating scandal that rocked the server. That's me. Been in the community for a long time. I'm not in it anymore, I guess. Do you want to give your background?
I am very good friends with Prophet. I joined a little bit after him, and I was drafted onto the Lightning, or the Pulse. And then after a season on the Pulse, I was invited to move up to the Lightning, but I actually chose to go to the worst team on the server, which was at the time the Mallards. And alongside a few of the leaders, I ran a very large overhaul of the Mallards team, and I structured a big rebuild and got them winning season after almost a winless season. So I kind of restructured the Mallards team, and I'm still popping in the Mallards server from time to time, but I'm kind of taking a little break from Polytopia just because it was taking a lot of time. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that me and Flame did was we both came in, went to the worst team, either by choice or by mods, and then build a really good squad out of that. I think that's important. When we were starting out in the server, man, there was literally only like 2 or 3 functioning teams. It was like the Jets, the Lightning,
and the Plague.
Yeah.
They would go back and forth between being good.
Yeah, and then the rest of the teams were not functional. Me and Flame, not to overtake credit, there's been a lot of structural overhauls I don't think a lot of the rookies nowadays know. That's the next question that you sent for me. Do you want to just jump into that? What was Polychamps like when we got on? Flame, do you know when you got on?
I got on summer of 2019.
I got on late 2018. Back then, I was just found the Discord and I wanted to climb Elo. That's all I did. I would just play 1v1s and I would farm Elo. That caught the eye of a few players from Polychamps. They brought me into the server. I didn't even use it for a little bit because it was so confusing, man. The onboarding process was awful.
Yeah. It still kind of is, but it's kind of better, but I'm not sure.
I technically joined with you at that time, but it was so confusing to me that I didn't end up joining until half a year later when you convinced me to.
I went and started playing on it because I wanted more competition. I like the drafting thing, gave me a ton of attention. It was really funny. But back then, the mods would just assign you a team. So I was like, I want to join the Bombers. I think it was Bombers and Light. And the mods were like, no. So I joined with this really good Chinese player called Bloodies, who's probably like one of the best 1v1ers. I don't think any rookies nowadays will know him. But it was me and Bloodies. They booted us to the Cosmonauts, which was the worst team at the time. It was like a total mess. There was, I think, 3 players that had chatted on we didn't even have a server. We had a channel. It was 3 people. Lemmy was trying to build a team out of nothing, and there was Pumpkin there. It was that was it.
At least I know who Pumpkin is.
Pumpkin's been there since the beginning, man. So much credit to that guy for putting energy in. Anyway, back then the server was totally different. There was no draft. I brought on the draft later. That was a big part of the time I spent in Polychamps. Probably was fighting for structural changes. So the teams back then were really unbalanced. There was like a mod team that had all the mods on it. It was ridiculous. It was so funny. The Crawfish had all the mods. This was like just when Quark was retiring. The only other team that was functional was the Jets, basically. It was just a mess. They would just assign players to teams they wanted to.
When I came in, it was similar to that. Basically, team leaders would just DM rookies that they liked, and they would be, please join my team. There was a recruiting process still, but they would send them a recruitment message, basically. And I remember I was sitting in my room with Prophet, and I was like, can you give me a rundown on what all the teams are like? And he described all the teams to me. And I was like, okay, I really like Lightning, and I really want to get like a good, strong mentor. So I wanted Bockled. So I DM'd Bockel, and I asked him if I could join his team. And he was like, let's do a match. We ran a 2v2 together, and we crushed the opponents. And he was like, okay, cool, man, you can join my team. But then the mods, who at the time were really worried about balance, which was kind of ironic because the crawfish were really unbalanced. And they were like, we don't know if we can get you on this team, because I was an undefeated rookie. I was 6-0 or something when I was trying to get on. And they were like, we don't want a good player going to the good Lightning.
This was the first time in the 6 months in that space where I got on and eventually Flame got on. This, I don't know if you guys know me, but basically a lot of the leadership, well, I mean, aside from my friends on the mod team, but I'm not a very loved character for the leaders of both the main server and PolyChamps. That was because I was super upfront about this league sucks. I know the mods were trying their best, and I know they were trying not to be unbiased. I came in just to pass time, and I found this server that had a mod-decided draft, and all the mod teams were stacked. And so I was like pretty open and being like, this is stupid. That was sort of like the first time we really had conflict where we argue about whether this was fair. I got stuck on my team. Flame, is it okay if we go into a little bit about how we built the cosmonauts, and then I want to hear how you guys built them?
I can go into the mallards a little bit later, but this is more for you. If Tntmasta wants to hear a little about the mallards.
Yeah. Well, you'll know a bunch of this stuff too, so definitely hop in. What we want to do next is that we talk about the creating question, so I'll go into how I sort of built the cosmonauts, and then Flame will talk about how I built the mallards. The other thing that the mods really did not like about me is I joined this team, and it was awful. Half the players were inactive. The first thing I did was I tried to take complete control over it, which is kind of like a profit thing to do. I get it, like run a coup on your first day. I was basically like, okay, I want full control over this because this shit is a mess, and the mods did not like that or appreciate that, which is fair. You don't want a random kid taking over a team. At the time, I was like the youngest. There were no kid leaders. It was all like 30-year-old dudes. Just for context, I was 16 at the time. Now I'm 18, about to turn 19.
Am I incorrect in saying that the Jets leader was a teenager when he started?
Rick? Oh,
online?
No, this is earlier. No, I don't. I think
the original leader then.
Scott was too, but Scott had just been banned.
Right. There were not many successful leaders. There were actually teams that didn't include younger people. Anyway, so I set that off on the wrong foot. My coup kind of failed, and I had to work through it. The team was pretty awful. The first thing I did was I made the server, and then I was like, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to need to build a good crew around it. This part's actually really important for anyone listening. If you are on a team and your team isn't doing well, what I'm going to go into next is basically how to build a championship team. I know everyone's going to be joking, go step one, just cheat, but we didn't start resetting until way later. And even with resetting, you need a good squad. I'm saying that this section basically like, okay, how do you go from a buff team, in my case, literally just me and Pumpkin, to a dynasty? The first step starts with recruitment. Don't focus on skill. The first big difference that I got was I didn't focus on skill. I focused on energy. Basically, who has time to commit to this game. And you're going to want to do that in a few ways. There's a few players that like hop on, have a ton of energy, and then just burn out. Puzzles are meaningless tasks, and they show who's committed enough to get them done. You just need to sign players that have the commitment. This sucks for younger teams because they want to draft good players, but a lot of times good players won't do well unless they're really good teams. Some of the rookies nowadays that we draft, I don't know about you, TNT, but I know that when in the later stages, we were drafting players that were just gods. And the reason is because we could baby them enough to where they would get on board. The learning curve for PolyChamps is pretty hard. So when you're a new team and you don't have a great roster already, don't focus on good players. Focus on players that will stick around because that's literally all that matters. That was what inherently put weaker teams at a disadvantage, even when they understood that. Like even when I understood that principle, I then had to pass good players, and I had to instead go for players that were super hungry and active. And I'm sure Flame can talk about his thoughts on what he did later. That was sort of the advice that I've given to a lot of teams. So you build that out, and then you start trying to make a community. The server we had, the Cosmonaut server, I'm sure a lot of you guys are in it, it had over like 2 million messages in it in a span of a year, which is insane.
That's a lot.
The way we did that is we just focused so much on getting people to constantly be checking the server and have a reason to come back aside from games. So we would have chats where we'd check in with each other. We would have random chats where we'd play games. During the later stages of the team, we'd have like weekly game nights. We literally would find reasons to make your team a community. Know your players personally. With the exception of some of the newer guys, TNC, I'm so sorry, because the experience got a little changed. At the start, you really want to know who you're playing with and be their friend. Like I have the numbers of like most of my Cosmonaut teammates. I know where they live. That sounds weird. That's how close we are. Like we talk about our normal lives with each other. That builds a really fun community. I think that was part of the reason when, I know this is skipping ahead a little bit, when people are asking, how did you rationalize cheating? And it was basically at a certain point, I can go into this more because there's way more than just, we started cheating. I'm still opinionated on this. It became Cosmonaut first. We were a team, we were friends together, we were a group of people before the server. That came before the server. If there was no server, Cosmonauts would still be a squad. It was just a group of people that liked hanging out, being a team together. Make rituals, make traditions. We had so many rituals and traditions, and everyone got really annoyed with me, but those are part of the things that bring stability. So make dumb rituals, make traditions, make organizations, make organized stuff in a good way. We had committees that would handle drafting. We would have rituals we would all do before every game. This is a newer one. You might remember TNC. I don't know when you got in, but Edgar Allan Poe, every morning he would send a message and he would send a coffee cup every morning during playoffs, and we would all respond with a coffee cup. Stupid traditions like that are what build a team. Come up with traditions that your team can keep and stick with them. Jump in a little bit on your thought process. Those things were sort of how we built it. Competitively, once you start getting good people, it's not that hard. We made everyone check in on every game. When you have high energy people, you can get them to do ridiculous stuff. I think I handled every turn, every game for seasons. And a lot of my teammates were there with me. We have every game, 13, 15 people talking. That's a huge difference. And I know everyone's going to chalk it up to you guys did whatever. We were when you have that many people, you will crush other teams. There's no limit to the creativity and interaction you can come up with. And then it also gets more fun. It's like a snowball. When there's 15 people talking, it's really easy to hang out. So focus on snowballing that interaction, snowballing the community. Do that with ritual, do that with friendship, and then make a good squad. That's how we went from 0 to 50 basically for our team. And then past that, it's just about strategy. We can talk strategy later. Flame, maybe jump in, tell us what you learned building the Mallards, because you went in a similar place. Pretty bad team, had to rebuild.
Wait, Tntmasta said he wanted to interject, so before I talk, I just want to make sure.
I just wanted to say I find it interesting that I had no idea Poe did any of those coffee cup rituals. He doesn't do it anymore.
I'm trying to think of good examples. There's so many.
The Daily Polaris fun fact, which then turned into a meme where random guests would just be like, Daily Polaris fun fact, and then say some.
These are all later stage ones. There's pretty crucial ones, but I forget. The thing is, I don't actually have access to the server. The mods took it over and locked me out, which sucks because I put a ton of effort into that server. That's probably the thing that bugs me most. A bunch of pro players still DM me and make fun of me for getting banned. I'm not really bothered by that per se. I am bothered by the fact that I don't have the server anymore because the mothership was so much good stuff. I'm trying to remember what it was that we would do.
All right, while you're thinking about that, the Mallards are kind of an interesting communities. If you roll it back, I was a rookie. I was pretty promising. I went to the polls. I think I was 4-1, and the only game I lost was because the teammate went AFK. Anyway, Baca told me, he was like, I'll bring you up to the Lightning, and I just scrolled all the way up to my things with Lord Camphor, who is the leader of the Mallards, if you don't know. I scrolled up my chats with him, and I was just looking at when I first contacted him. I wanted to kind of have meaning in the server. I didn't just want to be a normal Lightning player, even though the Lightning had just won a championship. Keep in mind, I wanted to be a leader. That was kind of what interested me the most. At this point, the Dragons were being created. They hadn't existed yet. I didn't really want to join them because that wasn't a struggling team. That wasn't even a team at that point. I didn't even think they were going to last. There was actually a lot of talk for a while about merging the Dragons and the Mallards teams together, and I pushed back against that because I thought that would have been a cluster. I was thinking about Bombers, thinking about Mallards. Dragons was a possibility. So I ended up going with the Mallards because Lord Camphor is a really cool guy, and he was just not very active at that point, but I knew that he would actually help me, and I really liked the Mallards team. I liked a lot of the players there, and they were pretty promising. I knew from Profit that 2 players, Shuey and Crunchy Mango, they were both really wanting more active time on the server, but nobody was taking the game seriously, so they almost went over to Cosmonauts. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I have some people that I can help start rebuilding this team with. And when I got on the server, man, it was bad. Nobody had sent a message in a week. I don't know how to program Discord servers, but there was no way to make guests be able to go onto it because every channel was open to the public. It was not a very well-designed server. So I spent a long time making all the channels private. I had to make a specific role for all the Mallards so they could see all the channels, and then that way I can make visitor channels. Because one of the first things I did was I created a visitor channel, I invited literally all these super active people from every team all over Poly Champions. That way we could just get people chatting.
That was a cosmonaut trick.
Getting notifications in there, getting people talking. I created a 2v2 tournament that I could get players on my team. What you needed one pro and then either one rookie, one Drake, or one potential recruit from the draft. That way we could have practice training new players and we could just scout out new people we might draft and train on Drakes. We created a really big culture around memes. That's why we kind of had a really good bond with a lot of the bombers for a while. We had a big Mallard versus Bomber meme war. We just have channels of memes and just talking with random people. But then another thing was I had a role called Exceptionally Active that I created, which allowed you access to the channel. Was called the High Council of Ducks. That was where all the leaders and all the really active people were. So it gave people incentive to start working. And then there was lots of phases of the rebuild. We got lots of really cool active people. And like Prophet was saying earlier, we literally say in our intro, we're like, we don't care if you're good. As long as you're active and committed, skill will come. We just want active, committed people. I did a lot of studying because Prophet obviously is my best friend in real life. So he gave me a lot of advice, but I also went back because as I mentioned previously, Baka was my mentor, Bakalol. He did a really massive rebuild of the Lightning 3 seasons prior. So I scrolled all the way up in the Lightning channels and watched how he did a rebuild. And I mirrored a lot of his strategies as well.
Flames was a really hard situation because I started with nothing, but it's pretty easy to make something with nothing in your way. But Flame had to basically tear down an institution that was pretty archaic and then build something else. I think the server goes down around that time because a bunch of the top teams were going through struggles then, and it was bad. Not to take credit, there have been other rebuilds. I think the Plague recently did a good rebuild in what Flame was saying, but without those two teams at the same time being saved and being boosted to really huge active teams, I think the server really gets screwed over.
When we did our rebuild, we had a lot of friends on the Bombers, specifically front DoorMatt, and Luna joined the Bombers. And then at that same point, because of our friendship with the Bombers, I gave a little bit of advice to Matt, but for the most part, Matt and Luna, they put in a lot of work and the Bombers got rebuilt. Bombers and Mallards were both two teams that were dead. They were dead because Snooper was inactive and Camphor was super busy. I don't want to take credit. Camphor put in a ton of work and a lot of the other co-leaders put in a lot of work. But I don't think that if I hadn't put a lot of those first stepping stones down, I don't know if anyone would have taken the time to actually do it for the Mallards. And now Camphor's super active, way more active than me. But at that point, he was just super busy.
COVID hadn't even happened yet during this. This was
I joined a few months before quarantine. I joined, I think, early February.
You had a whole year. You're mixing the time up. I was in high school when I started playing. What we were going to say, TNT, was that the Camphor's the type of player, he's great, but those players never take the first step to rebuild something. And I think that's an insight me and Flame game. So it's not just focused on raw activity. It's focused on people who are here to build stuff. So I never asked you this specifically, and I don't think Icky did, because by the time you came on, both of our teams were pretty strong. At the beginning, the questions I'd ask people like Icky and even way before Joe Young, before those guys, the people that I recruit then, I would ask questions like, do you want to build something that lasts? And that was sort of the test. You can force a team to be active and you can just manually do it. There's a lot of teams that are just basically a couple players together playing. If it won't outlive you, you never really build anything really cool. And I think that's one of the awesome things is that me and Flame both kind of stepped away and both of our teams are still really highly functioning.
One other thing that I think has done a lot for the server that was kind of influenced by, I'd say, more Profit, but in our eras of our rebuilds, I'd say, one, the big thing, it has underlying causes that I'm going to go into, but I think the draft was really a huge turning point because around the time that I was becoming a leader, me and Profit were fighting for more leaders' rights. It sounds so silly because it's a stupid game server, but seriously, we briefly touched this, but mods had all the control. Leaders couldn't do anything. Mods literally could just do whatever they wanted. And then the leaders chat, when we created the draft, it was around the same time. I don't remember the exact reason, but there was some beef between Profit and JD and Kate.
Previously, there was beef because there was abrasiveness because I was calling out the mods on not a good process. And then
Can you go into it in a second? I just want to go on my point because that's a long story. As those mods stepped back, we wanted to show us as the leaders, this is going to be better. So the leaders chat was a place of lots of discourse. There was so much arguing and there was votes. We did lots of leader votes. It really turned our server from a group monarchy from the mods to a democracy.
like a modern league. It was looking at teams as shareholders and not as just participants.
And that doesn't make it easy because there was a ton of arguments in the draft process, creating the draft. It was Profit's baby. He put a ton of work. All the leaders put input, but Profit outlined almost the entire thing.
The original mods were super against any type of movement happening. So I would pitch ideas to them, and they would be like, if it's not in a 6-page paragraph paper or whatever, they wouldn't accept it. It was like this terrible... Yeah, like I would DM people and I'd be like, here's a really good idea. And I know it's a good idea because it's an idea that we currently use. So anything from like leaders having votes on decision, drafts, to like how teams operate or change, right? They were against any type of movement. So it kind of went in a couple of phases. And we couldn't have done this without Unwise because he really stepped in during a time where a few of the mods were inactive and changed things. It kind of went from the modarchy, like modarchy to a free-for-all, which we thought was better. Unwise gave leaders a lot of authority. We made a leader voting system, and it was this crazy 2-month period where so many changes happened.
The test for that was the draft, and there was a lot of fighting, and it was specifically between the people who wanted the draft and then the people who didn't. It was led by Profit versus Rick, basically, by the Jets, and they made their own draft system. And we ended up adjusting both, but we ultimately kind of went with Profit's. Personally, I didn't like the idea of the draft because this was the climax of our rebuild. This is when I was first joining, was when we were drafting players. I personally liked the idea of just DMing people because I knew that I would put in more effort than almost any other recruiters and I could actually draft lots of players. Even though my team was bad, I had that much confidence in myself and the other people on my team that we could put in the work. But Profit was like, no, guys, the draft is going to balance.
And the Jets thought this too, real quick, Braden, was that a lot of the teams were really against any type of change because it was directly benefiting them. The Jets, the two best recruiting teams with probably the Malage as the third, were the Jets and the Cosmonauts. There was a period when mods no longer had say and teams would draft people. The mods, the Jets and the Cosmonauts basically got all the really good rookies. That was like the time
Jets
period.
Were really good and the Cosmonauts worked really hard.
Yeah, and
if you're an amazing team, people are going to want to join you, and everybody who joins the Jets becomes good because the Jets are really strict with who they let in, and they have a really good training process.
And then it was, aside from basically Unwise, who really helped out, it was literally just, we don't want to change this because we're winning off this right now. And it was so hard to push, man. I have to give credit here to like Vorse. Vorse kind of was a big move on this, but people like McCompany, like the Jets, were like so against it. It wasn't the only thing. There was this just 2-month window where so much stuff got changed. This was just a random period. This was before Luna was a mod. She was able to do stuff.
Luna and Matt were creating the Nova
League,
which I think was not necessary, but it helped a little bit.
I just think it was like this period where the doors were kind of open for the league to make stuff instead of mods. I'm sort of sad now because we're going back to a system where it's just mod controlled, and I think mods are like great and all, but you need to let the league shareholders, the teams, decide how to run things. I'm proud of how that situation went. But
I think that was the peak of Polychamps, though, when the leaders chat was popping off every day with arguments and votes.
People are so against arguments. They're like, this is bad. Like, arguing is a sign that this is bad. But it was like a sign that it was good. It was really discourse going. And I think for me, it was really big because prior to this, the mods refused to make decisions unless there was like a paper written because they needed to make good decisions. But when you have like a democracy and open forum for these things, you can put an idea out and it will be chiseled down to something useful. My original draft isn't the draft we use today, but it was my draft and other people's ideas and different things getting cut out and added in that made it so effective.
I also liked it because it made the teams work together. Like some teams don't like each other, but they had to work together in the mod chat. Before, and I think more now as well, it's like teams are segregated into their own servers and they don't communicate a lot. When the mod teams were working together, it just brought the server together. Oh, my team's like this, my team's like this. Let's do something that benefits all of us instead of just the mods are like, I think this is going to be good for everyone.
Regarding Flame's point, this is the peak of the server. If you look at like growth stats, I think on the server, it like was basically growing faster than it ever during that time period. And right now it's fine. Like it's stagnating. It's growing a little bit, but I think the game is growing so fast that anything less than a lot of exponential growth is basically decreasing, if that makes sense. Anyway, I'm not saying the server is going to be ruined. It's good. It's doing good. I'm proud of it. I just missed that time. I think that's a pretty good rundown of how we build our teams.
So when does Icky Karma come into all this?
Oh, bro, Icky has a cool story. He was in the Jets.
Real quick, I want to jump into how to sign good. So we're in this podcast, we're kind of teaching you how to build a really cool team. We covered the history. We covered how to build the foundation. The next sort of is how to put together a winning roster. The next thing that really made the mods hate me was I would always try and bend rules to my favor. I think I was honorable in this because, like I'm saying, whenever there was a system I was able to take advantage of, I would try and change that system. I want rules to be like a cage where I can push as hard as I can against that cage and they will stay strong.
Yeah, in a way.
I want to be like an NFL coach where it's like I can use everything given to me at my disposal. I don't want to have to purposely limit myself. I want to be as competitive as possible. And when there's a rule that didn't let me do that, or when there's a rule that was able to be exploited, I would try and change that and make it fair. But if it was a rule that was staying around, of course I would exploit it. So some of the things that we really took advantage of was poaching. This was when the league had there were really bad rules around player joining and leaving. And we also changed this, fixed it to make it better. We would poach a lot of good players. This is important. Once you start building that really active foundation, good players from other teams who they're not getting the playing time, they're not getting the teammates, they're not giving the activity or competitiveness, they will come to your team. So Cosmonauts was like, we're really active, we're really competitive, and we started poaching players. So we took Sebastian, we took Vapo from the Plague, just Linokami from the Sparkies, he was a god. These are like the core guys. Icky came in the stage later. So the core of the Cosmonaut team was basically me. After Quasi and Yogg left, it was me, Pumpkin, Vapo, Linokami. A few of the players that aren't around, those were the guys that stuck. And we started drafting a ton of rookies. That was like Joe Young, Icky, Loki, they all came in around the same time. It was when our recruitment was top tier. Before you get good players, focus on getting good recruiters. We would focus on drafting good recruiters. That's like making an investment to constantly keep it training. Icky was loaned to us from the Jets. He wasn't getting playing time. We threatened Unwise, not threatened, but we were like, Unwise, we're going to poach him. And Unwise was like, oh, so he loaned him to us.
There was a point where, before you got Sebastian, where me and you went on the Bombers server and helped them restructure their whole thing. And then they were like, thanks. And then they banned us from their server.
And then
like, we're not going to use it.
Yeah, and then in return from that, I poached Sebastian from their team.
We literally spent like a whole night helping them rebuild their whole server. J.Fur was like, thanks, man. And then all their veterans were, we got too many pings. And then Sebastian was like, okay, this team's never going to change. And he left, which they did change. The credit to them. But that was
our point then to the Bombers was like, you're never going to change unless you tear this down and build a better foundation. And Sebastian leaving was a part of that. I truly don't think the Bombers ever rebuild with Sebastian, not because Sebastian is not an amazing player and a really active teammate, but because it wasn't a good foundation. You have to start with the front door mats and the Lunas. Anyway, once you have the foundation done, then you start bringing in players like Zeb, like all those good guys. Icky was brought over to us. He was immediately just really good. Me and him got along really well. Then there came time, the Jets wanted him back. They had a spot for him on the team. That was like when the Jets were the best team, without a doubt. We have this stupid Cosmonaut tradition called the Regatta, where we make 11 free-for-alls with every player.
Oh, boy.
So, this was when the team was at 11 players. That was the max. It was all the classic names. And we just had this night. We spent about 4 hours playing them. It was the most ridiculous night ever. Basically, everyone won a game or two. And it was just some of the most ridiculous games. It was so much fun, too. Because it's not like normal Polytopia. Like, you're in the chat being like, Joe Young, don't kill me here. Joe Young, I need to kill Vapo. Like, don't kill me. It was like Monopoly. It was hilarious. And after that night, Icky was just like, you know what, man? I could join this really good team, but this is the team I want to be on. And he left the Jets formally, and Unwise was kind of mad at me for that. But yeah. And that was what we built. We built a community that was really, before everything else, it was a really strong community. And that's what brought
Wasn't he loaned to you for a season?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a loaner. Like they were like, we get him back after this season. But then did you trade for him? What did you got? Like you traded him for like FATs or something?
We basically just poached him, and Unwise was livid. So Unwise was like, one day I'm going to have a favor of you to ask, and you need to deliver it when that moment comes.
Ooh.
I was like, okay. It ended up being like a draft pick, so I like literally didn't care. It's like basically trading Icky Karma for like a draft pick, which is so worth it. Anyway, I want to cover the obvious. How the Cosmonauts fell.
My team was a little bit involved in it, but I wasn't personally.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it just on me's.
The people on my team for it have been exposed now, so that's not like I would be exposing anything.
Okay.
But
so this is the thing that everyone's going to roast me on, but there's a lot of cheating at the top levels of Polychamps, top levels of League One or whatever leagues you play in. And I know a lot of new players won't get this because it's not really as much of a thing nowadays.
Because with Moonrise, it's a whole new version, and it constantly checks with the server, and you would literally have to hack into the multiplayer servers.
There was just like, back then there were players, they were openly literally packet scripting and like doing ridiculous cheats. So it's just something you like kind of get around. That's just sort of the environment. It felt like a lot of the teams, didn't feel like I know these guys, some of the people who were playing against were resetting. And at a certain point, it was like, hey, we're here to be competitive. We're not here to be saints. We put a ton of time into this. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start resetting. I think people think about it in the wrong way. First of all, people aren't really good at the game, so they don't understand in what context people want to reset. So the main thing that I would do was that I would map out turns. It wasn't getting extra vision. I'm just like a visual person, so you would map out turns. And what this does catch is errors. I would have the luxury, which is an unfair thing, obviously. I'm not saying it isn't resetting, but we're not just spamming explorers. We would keep our explorers. We would just map out parts of the turn and then fix it if there was something we didn't like. So a lot of the screenshots that you see on the Cosmonaut channel are me presenting a few variations of a turn. We would probably only use this on specific things. Like a lot of people are like, oh, Prophet doesn't count, you cheated. Like, dude, I never needed to reset against almost all of you. like there's no need for that. I think that was the biggest thing that we used it in. And I know people are going to say like, no, man, you were the only one cheating. If I was on the flip side of this, I'd probably think the same thing too. But I played a lot of these guys, man, and I know we were cheating because I would see things that I wasn't supposed to see, and I would see the person reacting to something that they weren't supposed to see. And it was just so obvious. It was like the Spider-Man meme, like the two Spider-Men pointing at each other. It was basically that. I think a lot of that's fixed. After the crackdown, I think that Cosmonauts got witch hunted. I was sort of a target that people have been looking for a long time. So before me, there was just kind of a mutual agreement. It was not to like go hard on a cheating scandal. Like if someone was getting sus runes on another team, you wouldn't do that because there's probably a person on your team who's getting equally sus runes. And I think that kind of broke with me where people didn't like me enough to sort of disregard that. And I get it. That's cool. I was sort of a controversial figure and they were waiting for a thing.
One of the questions here is like, did you think you would never get caught? Which, again, I don't know when you joined the server, but back before this all happened, people suspected that Prophet cheated. People suspected that all the top players cheated. And I've said for a while that I think a lot of the top players cheat. You can't prove it because it's pretty much impossible to prove without going into their server and seeing it. And I think a lot of people did it privately. I think Cosmonauts were the only team that openly did it as like a part of their culture. I don't know if you know what happened, but something happened that leaked a screenshot from the Cosmonaut server, which gave the mods enough proof to then put a full-scale investigation. But without that, they never would have been able to do that. Team servers are, in general, pretty private.
It really started after we had a semifinal against the Sparkies where I don't want to get in specifics. So people are going to fact check this and come for me and try and present their... Like, there's a million arguments you can make on both sides. There were just some openers that were ridiculous. There was like an 8-whale opener. It was just too much, and we lost that series because we played legit. There was moments where we were like, do we reset this run? Do we reset this? We didn't, and so the season after that was when we were like, okay, we're going to like actually work hard now and just incorporate this into our game. That season was the most dominant season I think any team has ever put on. We didn't lose a single away game. It was like legendary. The only thing that we used for resets basically was just let's map out turns. That's basically all we did. Yeah, it's not fair. It's totally cheating, but that's who we were up against at the time. It was just like an arsenal. I actually kind of have trouble playing the game nowadays because it is a lot more exciting and fun when you're able to map it out. It's just a higher skill game. So we just got used to that. I think the biggest thing was that Cosmonauts had a mentality that was not like cult-like, but it was like team first. So we didn't really care. We prioritized ourselves. So much of it came from that the server really didn't like the team. We'd poached a lot of players. We were our own isolated community. And from the moment I got in the server, I was getting cheat accusations. So imagine like being the best player for like 2 years and everyone's like, you're cheating. At a certain point, it's like there's no downside to cheating. Everyone already thinks I've reset. And the Cosmonaut team was like we're our own. So that's when the kind of started. And you're like, okay, we're going to start mapping turns. And so we did. When there were turns, we would prevent multiple variations. We never like openly abused it. Brutal stuff. But, you know, we would
like,
map out turns.
Save in a city to constantly get Explorer?
Yeah, like we didn't really do that much. On like most games, I don't need to reset. There are tactics in the old game, at least, to moving explorers the right way, like getting them to move where you want them to go. So we didn't need to do that. Would we have done that if we needed to? Probably. It wasn't blatant like star hacking. We knew how to control ruins too. So like almost all the things we didn't really need hacks for, if that makes sense. The thing that we needed the resetting for was doing a turn and then redoing it to see if this version was better, we liked it more. It's just hard. It takes a ton of time to map that out manually. And so we just were putting a ton of time into playing like a million turns, and it was just way easier and more fun to do it that way. That was kind of how we went well with it. I'm a very competitive person. I got banned right after we beat the Jets in the semifinals. The Jets basically stalled out the game because they knew we were about to get banned for it. But we'd won 2 games on them. We'd going to our first finals, and then all came crowding down. It actually really bothered me for some time because I did want to win. Like, I wanted to take it from 0 to championship. There's this quote from this famous football coach who coached 20 years and never won. He was really good. His player, Ladainian Tomlinson, asked, Coach, how do you deal with the fact that we never won? And it was like, hey, we never had a championship, but we had championship days. And that's sort of what I left with. And I'm pretty at peace with it. We had an amazing team. I had so much fun. Parlay champs came at me in a point in my life where I wasn't doing too hot, and I made a ton of really good friendships I'm going to keep with me, and it was a great experience. I'm super grateful for how it all went. It kind of sucked to go out on that note. It was sort of what we went with. We knew what we were getting into.
You also quoted that Lance Armstrong was the best biker because he never got investigated.
Oh, yeah, that was my username for a little bit. That was just sort of on the same thing where it was like there were players that I was friends with that I knew reset, and we never went nuclear. Sometimes it's hard to get concrete info, and sometimes that's our friend. There were players on other teams that did it too. I think it's better now. I think a lot of teams stopped after this. After the new season, a lot of the really dominant teams stopped being so dominant. Cosmonauts still winning games because we have the foundation down. It's okay. It's in the past now. It's just one of those things where it's like biking, man. I felt like biking where it's like, yeah, Lance Armstrong got investigated, but the 37 people below him were all doping too. Like if some of those Tour de France's, like the guy who finished in 40th has won because everyone else since then has gotten banned for cheating. So it was just sort of a thing back then. I know Flame will have some good insights to this, how to be pretty good at the game. I know everyone's going to be doubting me, but I was basically a top player, and Flame was a top player for almost a year prior. We didn't need resets for that.
Before we do that, could we cover how much of the aftermath or after you left or got banned or whatever mark you want to call, how much you're aware of that?
I'm pretty aware of it. I pretty much not scapegoated myself, but I made the calls on how everything went. I'm happy with how it went down. I think we changed the name, but the team's still together, and I was the one really resetting, so it wasn't like I'm guarding everyone. I'm aware of how it went down. Me and Vapo sort of got booted off. Everyone else is serving their punishments, but I'm pretty pleased with how I'm fine. Obviously, I'm bitter. We're going to win the championship that season, and I know that people are going to be like, "Oh, you're going to reset to do that." It wasn't hard resets. You can't act like the season 1, 2, 3, 4 teams didn't do it too. The Bombers know, so every team knows. We were just inches off it being just a part of history that the Cosmos won season 7. I'm aware of pretty much how everything went down. Do I have regrets? For the championship days club, man. We had an amazing time. I wouldn't change anything except maybe winning a title for the world. And honestly, not winning a title is maybe maybe that's karma. So I don't really have many regrets. I had an amazing time building that team up. The server's awesome. I'm pretty at peace with how it all went.
So you never did any star hacks, giving yourself more stars or anything like that then?
I downloaded Freeze APK, but I never got it to work because I use an iPhone. And the only time I downloaded something like that was to fuck around with it. I know a few players that could do it, but no, we never got into that. We want a competitive game. I know everyone's like, why did you cheat? We cheated because we felt we wanted to even the playing field, and we felt that it was reasonable to just let us have the ability to map out turn. We thought it was the other guys were using steroids, so we're going to, the tiniest thing you can think of, we're going to put studs on our cleats or whatever. For us, it was never about winning. It was about making a playing field that we could compete at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How's your alt doing?
I don't have an alt, unfortunately. I've thought about it. I definitely have, but...
Oh, so when you mentioned it, that was only to veer people like me away from the truth?
Yeah, guys, don't expose this. My other alt is actually Strelda. I've been playing the long game. Only way I keep up with the server is through my friends. The Cosmonaut team still lets me know what's going on occasionally.
There's a lot of people that thought I was his alt for a while. I joined the server. I was like, I'm Prophet's friend, and everyone was like, okay, Prophet.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Did Shiny get banned too?
Yes, he did.
That's crazy, man. Shiny was close. Yeah, no, I think just sort of our era is kind of gone. Most of the players I played with are retired now. And let the young buds play, man. Let the rooks cook.
A lot of the OG Mallards have retired or moved to different teams. Hello, I'm Bush is on the Lightning now. Shiny got banned. Hippo deserved to get banned, but Hippo got banned. We know he's still on the server, but a few of his accounts got banned. Zambara's gone. Yeah. Chewy's gone.
That's crazy.
Crunchy Mango, I think, still plays.
Mm-hmm.
But
ironically, there have been basically one cosmonaut retiree from the original core, other than like Quasi and Yogg. We had an initial build-up where we made this like team with Quasi, Yogg, and Camster and Skebble. That team collapsed, and then we had to rebuild again, and that was when Aki came on. And that was a low point. So you are going to face low points during the rebuild, but from that point on, basically post like me, Foppo, there's only been one person, like Lin Okami. And I think that just speaks to the quality of focus on people trying to build stuff, focus on making a really good community, and it'll stay around, man. This is not something to brag about, but I don't think you can take a single other team in the league that could go through something like this. We literally were such a tight squad. We've actually seriously considered taking the entire roster and just going to a new esports and then just playing there. Unironically, we were close to doing that for some other games. I think we had a few other games at the time. We play like Clash together, other things like leagues. No, I think it's like build that squad first, man, and the rest will come. One of the things I'm so proud of is that the team is still really functioning post me. I owe it to those players. Those guys are great.
You didn't mention Skrielder or Leo Rising yet.
Leo Rising was like a rook. He's like a tiny blip on my radar. I talked to him once. He's a good guy. I was like whatever team free Leo Rising or whatever. Skrielder is like he's kind of like.
I'm not going to comment on Skrielder. I'm just not going to comment. That's not something that I want to get into right now.
Skrielder just like has so much time. Like I've got a full-time job now. I dropped out of school. Flame's working at a startup. I'm doing startup stuff. We just don't have time to sit in the server all day and view our narrative of what happened. And I feel like he does, so a lot of the things that he says go as history, which kind of sucks. That's history, man. Whoever works the hardest gets to write the books.
I didn't get banned because I didn't cheat, nor did I get in any scandals, but I quit around the time that Prophet quit for reasons like I was upset about mods coming over and banning everybody. Just a lot of people that on my team were getting banned or were like leaving, and so it was just kind of like I wanted to spend more time. It was taking a lot of my time, and I'd say for the most part of my leadership time I was pretty well respected, but the day Prophet was getting banned, I got in a very like large argument with a lot of the leaders, and I understand now that I was being unreasonable because I was defending my friend. There was just like a lot of hostility between me and the mod team. Yeah, I was just getting kind of tired. I think my rebuild was successful, and I think I might still come back another time and play a season or two when I'm less busy, but we'll see.
I feel like I could maybe legally or not, like undercover come back, but I don't know if I have to. I don't know what I would do, if that makes sense. As much as I like joked about making a new persona, like I'm pretty proud of what I did. I don't want to go on a new team. I don't have a desire to do that. Like rebuilding was hell. I'm so proud of what we made, but would I do it again? I don't know, man. Like, I love what we made, but it was a grind.
It's tiring for sure. It's like hours a day. Like
it wasn't just a team. It was building up a community, a league, and everything. I don't know. I think Newt made an interview recently. Someone sent to me where he was like, he did credit me. Like, I hope I don't just go down as like that guy who cheated. I get it. If I do, I totally understand. We put in a ton. We built really cool teams. Put in a lot of work into making a cool server. And we were really good. I hope that doesn't get lost to time. I would clap half the fools now. I heard Quark's going to come back. I might come back and play Quark just to put that one to rest. I remember when I messaged Quark when I was a rookie. I was like an undefeated rookie. I think it was like 30-2 or something. And I messaged him. And he was like, meet me in the finals. I guess we only technically... Cosmonauts only technically made the finals. We never beat I think whoever was at the end. Like, we beat the Jets. We didn't win the finals. It was just funny. He retired. I never got to play him. I think he's coming back now.
Is he actually? I did not hear that, but that's interesting.
I heard it
I might
too.
have to come back and play him.
Yeah.
I got a DM the other day from some kid. Oh, someone from the Jalapenos, I think. His name is Polytopia Gaming.
Oh, boy.
He was trying to recruit me, and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't play anymore. I'm also a leader on the Mallards. And he was like, oh, I was just looking at people, and I saw that you had a really high elo in like before Moonrise. And I was like, oh, thanks, man. Pass.
That's not how you recruit.
One other thing in terms of legacy, me and Flame were on the beta. We were on the testing server where they make decisions about the game. The Polaris trees were awful prior to me making a big fuss with a few other people about that. So every time you see the Polaris' trees, just remember me. I feel like that's what something going down the box.
I mean, you could try.
You went to the server? I'm asking TNT, have you ever done the Facebook server?
No, I'm not on the Facebook League.
Yeah, the Facebook League is a very fun thing to do. I know Profit got to League One. I never had the drive to do League One, so I did once. I went, what is it, 20 games?
Yeah, you played 20 games this season.
I think I went 19-1.
Whoa.
Those are pretty fun.
Getting to League One was a grind, and League One is hilariously rife with corruption. It was just like 1v1, and they, like, most of the boomers on there didn't even know what resetting was. So the League One was just all cheaters. Like, I remember getting in my first game and being like, okay, I understand. Like, basically when I was playing, everyone would go 10-10 because they would win all their host games and they would lose all their away games.
Yeah, that's how you can tell someone's cheating, is if they win their away games. But if they win their host and lose their away, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah. I think the only time we spawn reset was like unwinnable spawns. But I think they fixed that nowadays. It just sucks getting to when you put hours in. Our experience that really, like, I guess turned us to the dark side was like working so hard, and then you get there and it's just like unwinnable. It's like, okay, like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I don't know. I think the only time I would do it would be like really whack spawns. But for elo climbing, I wouldn't. I don't have time for that. Elo was just all fresh. I just clapped everyone. 1800, baby. 1800 elo.
So let's move this up.
Yeah,
TNT,
what else?
got any more questions? Got anything else you want to?
Yes, Elo regarding your opinion. How high of Elo can you get without quote-unquote cheating?
Endlessly high. I don't think most of the top players.
Cheating?
Yeah, cheating is only hyper comp. You're like playing in championships and you have like way more than just Elo on the line. Anyone who climbs high in Elo is most likely legit, even if they're a cheater. People don't have time for that.
Let me just say, like, if you're high Elo, there's almost no one that's high, like, other than, like, okay, I know a couple people who climbed Elo on main server. So, like, there's this kid, I think his name was Lighthouse, and he was like one of like the top 20 Elo, but he wasn't actually that good. He just only played on main server. But like, other than that, if you're actually like high Elo, most of those people who are high Elo, I think, cheat at least a little bit. Some really great players that I played with, I'm not going to name drop, but some very, very top players, I'm confident that they've cheated in games against me. I'm like, I don't have physical proof, but I have stuff. It's like, you know, people think Dream reset his Minecraft speedruns because like the odds are like 1 in 10 trillion, stuff like that, where it's like you can't prove it, but it's like almost impossible. But that doesn't make them not good. They're still some of the most amazing Polytopia players ever. They're still super skilled. I don't think all cheaters are bad. I think there's a lot of people that cheated that are also good. Profit, on the other hand, he's terrible at the game.
If you're just like raw cheating, you're not going to get very far. It's like, even if you're hard. And I would keep most of my stuff just to like team stuff. It was like a season game, and we were just like mapping out our turns. I don't need to map out turns. I'm just 1v1ing some people.
Other than hacking, like star hacking for like just basic cheats, ones that I'm like that I've been made aware of, it's not going to give you a huge advantage. Other than spawn resetting, you could have put the worst player ever and be like, you can cheat all you want, and take the best player and be like, you can't cheat, and the worst player is still not going to win.
Spawn resetting, just for anyone out there who like wasn't around during that time, it wasn't that good because you can only see like the, what is it, 9x9 or whatever, 4x4. I don't even remember.
5x5.
Anyway, 5x5. Yeah, you like literally it's not that good. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I would reset spawns, but it would only be like, is this spawn unwinnable? If it is, flip it, and then I would roll with whatever was next. I would never be like, let's go for extra and get a 6 spawn, because you can never predict that stuff. It's not good for mapping.
As a player who didn't reset, I have been times where I was tempted to do that. You can go to Mallard's games and see like we would have to like do our restart 10 games in a row. You'd be like, this is so exhausting when you know on turn 1 that it's not going to work and you could have just reset it. I think that's something they fixed with the Moonrise, which is definitely probably going to be helpful.
The restart rule was a thing that like we were a big part in adding in because we didn't like that and we didn't want to have to just resort to that. Was pre any cheating, but like that's another example where it's like if you have a flexible institution that can adapt, it's really awesome and easy to add rules on. What's the current restart rules? When we were playing, it was what was it, 2 or was it 1?
Oh, I think they changed it. You would get before turn 3. Well, they changed it a bunch of times, but for the majority of our time, you got your own personal one before turn 3. And then there's restartable spawns. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's no such thing as a restartable spawn anymore. Everybody just gets one restart and they can use it.
I still think our era was the best. That's probably some tinted glasses. But
It sucked. You're looking at it through like graduation goggles. It sucked. You start like 20 times in a row.
Tactical restart? Okay, maybe not 20, but when you had like 1 or 2, it was so tactical. It was so much fun.
But like I'm just saying, like the restartable spawns was like.
Yeah, that's fair. Me and Flame know a ton about like famous players because we were like those were just our friends. I have stories to tell about probably like every player or who was in the league.
I joined in the middle of last year, so I don't know most of those players.
Who do you know? Who are like the gods that's to you? Because we can like tell hilarious stories about them all.
Poe, I guess. Edgar Alien Poe.
Edgar's a rookie, bro. He's doing so good. I'm so proud of him. Bro, Edgar was like a rookie we drafted who like just worked really hard. That's hilarious. Seriously, like if you think of like a Hall of Fame, I think Edgar's like an amazing guy and a great player. It's hilarious to me. He came in at the last second. Joe Young feels like a rookie. Okay, not a rookie to me too, but Joe Young feels like on the younger side of like a career.
I remember Joe Young when he was very first drafted by Profit. Him and someone else. I don't remember who the other person was, but I was doing a recruitment game with some terrible rookie, and I was like, okay, we'll take on 2 cosmonaut rookies, like easy. Well, like I'll be able to train my player and everything. And it went to the most intense game ever where they were like the 2 cosmonaut rookies. One of them was Joe Young, but mostly it was Joe Young where like they got this like custom house spot for like 30 stars on turn 15. And they were like just destroying my teammate. And I was like, all right, we ended up getting crushed because this rookie was not a good player. I don't actually remember who it was. So
Joe Young, I think, is one of the players closest to me in playstyle. He's like very good.
Yeah, I was just shocked by how good of a player he was as like his like 10th game on the server.
Yeah, me and him were both resource hogs. So we would play with players like Loki, for example, is like super, like we call him like Thorny, where it's like he can play low resource and just cause a ton of problems. Iki's just really flexible. Like Iki's just a god player because he's like he can basically do anything. Just Luck is like very tactical, game controlling, but me and Joe Young play the same style where it's like take as max resources and just end off our aggression. Do you remember most of the strategy, Flame? I don't know if you do. Do people still play the 3-1? That's what I made. That was like the one
play
thing
the what?
The 3-1. You would be taught if you came on the server.
That was one of my main strategies, and my teammates hated when I used it. But
3-1.
Me and Josh both use it a
3-1
lot.
It's a Luxador opener. Yeah, it's the strongest Luxador opener in the game. I think it still is.
People argued with me a lot when I did it.
One more thing I'm totally narcissistically taking credit for, though, is when we came on the server, it was a giant meta. And when we left, it was not a giant meta anymore. I think it's like an aggro/tempo meta, but that was probably the biggest change that I think, not only me, but I think I'm primarily the reason. Like why. I think some of the aggression when I came on the server wasn't good. I think I was a really strong player, but I'm not sure if I was like the GOAT, but I was, for a certain time, I was the GOAT, basically, because there was such a hole where aggression was supposed to be, and I would just use that. By the time, when I first started playing games, compared to like when I quit the server, the games were totally different. Like when I was first starting out, battleships were every game.
Oh, archers. Cork was like, everybody, archers are the best unit. So everyone was like, yes, Daddy, Cork. And making archer.
A few other players can get credit for this too. Call Me Susan's okay. And then a lot of the cosmonauts, Joe Young, Just Luck, Icky, Ido. I'm totally forgetting a bunch of other players who are really good at this. Who else is Unwise, definitely.
As we're in this call, I know this is Prophet's interview and I've just been chipping in a little bit, but I just want to say, if we're talking about great players, one of the greatest players on the server that I do not think gets enough credit is Zorkin. I think Zorkin is easily top 5. I think without him, dude, on our rebuild season, I helped in almost like every game. I tried as much as I could, and I'm a decent player. I do not think I'm the GOAT. I think I might be top 30. I'm maybe top 40. But I think Zorkin, he's so strategically minded, and he made these crazy maps. I don't know. I don't even, like, some people's brains just work in ways that are perfect for Polytopia, and he's one of those people. So I just want to give him a shout out. And Bakalol is also definitely very, very good.
Zorkin and Bakalol, though, were like part of the old guard giant meta. Like that was the game they excelled in. They're like super bright guys. So if you go and
I think Bakalol is like that, dude. You haven't played. I've played more games of Zorkin than I think probably anyone else. Zorkin is very adaptable.
No, I'm not saying they aren't adaptable. I'm just saying that the meta they came in was the giant meta, and I think that changed, and they were fine with the change. So I think it went from like a giant meta, and then you had an influx of
lots of night metas. We did lots of crazy night plays.
Yeah, you had like the late game giant meta, mid game sort of, and then I think me and a few other players came in and made the game way more aggro. And now you're seeing a reaction to that, where I think players like Thomas Ribeiro is doing really well because he's playing a strategy that's good against aggro. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a good player can adapt. Great players can play any strategy. Zorkin and Bakula are always going to be good. But when your game is excelling in the meta, it's like rock, paper, scissors. I think like Bach is like a rock player, and I'm like a scissors player. And I think someone like Thomas now is coming in where everyone's going scissors and everyone's going aggro and riders. The next meta is going to be a reaction to him. Players like that. The one thing that I want to walk away going away with that I think adding in the aggro style that I had really changed how people played and looked at the game. Before, I know everyone can say whatever they want about the people prior, but they were not ending the game as quickly as we started. Like we started making turn 7, turn 8 be the game was over by then. And prior to that, man, it was like turn 20 where games would end. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big reason why I was pretty good at the time. I think I still am a top player. Definitely top 10 easily, but maybe I don't think I'm like top 2 unless it's my meta. If it's my meta, if we go back to like the giant meta, I think that people just did not understand how to go aggro.
I have general questions, but I can stick them all on Flame instead.
Yeah, just throw them all right now. Go for it. We'll try to answer them quick and not ramble.
Okay. Favorite tribe? Lux?
I think I'm like the GOAT Lux player. I love Kiku. I love Yadek. I think Samanti actually, however you say it, will probably actually be a tribe that I'm good at, but I haven't really played them yet. Flame, what about you?
I was always strongest as Lux. I mean, obviously, because Lux is just better. I never got to try the new tribe. I bought them the other day, but I just don't play Polytopia enough, so I haven't checked them out yet. Originally, I was a huge Yadek player because I'm very into movement, and I'm very into like controlling movement and controlling my area, so I was always Yadek. I think ultimately I was better at Lux and Barter just because they were the strong tribes, and I like being in control, and Yadek kind of fell out of the meta.
Yeah. I also think one of the Cosmonaut tribe that we're probably pretty famous for is running Lux a lot. We're famous for running Kiku a lot, and we're famous for running Illyrian a lot. We use Illyrian a lot. We did, and it was really effective.
Tiny map Yadek. There was a tiny tournament. It was like a long time ago, and I had some really, really crazy Yadek plays. I think tiny map Yadek and Hudrik. Like if you're playing on a smaller land-based map, Yadek and Hudrik will dominate, and they're like really underrated.
What else, DNC?
Favorite unit?
I'm a rider player. I'll always be a rider player. I think archers are really fun too. The game is built around riders. It wouldn't be the game without
Knights and catapults.
Catapults? Really?
I had lots of games where I felt like I was getting stalemated or like I was going to get crushed and I was playing with a teammate, and I could very consistently turtle up with catapults and let my teammate take over and get the win. I really like catapults for last ditch efforts, and I like knights for when I'm in control.
Yeah.
Memorable game you ever played?
Oh, playoffs versus Sparkies. I think everyone has screenshots of this one. This was like before we really started resetting, and everyone like gets mad at the Explorer and whatever. We didn't even get good rune results. I don't know why people use this as the example, but semifinals was one of the playoff wins I've had versus Sparkies. It was the first game, and we just blew them out of the water. It was just like a cost difference. The last couple of games, it didn't go our way. We had like 4 whales, and the other one there was like 3 unlucky ruins that we decided we were like, let's roll with. And after that series, with losing that series, that was when it was like, okay, let's start adding in basic turn remapping. And that's when we like, let's add in harder resets to our game. That game definitely was my like magnum opus. Other than that, a few free-for-alls.
For me, I've always excelled at free-for-alls, so I've had some really fun free-for-alls. I'd say either one of 2 games, either the prior mentioned low-tier free-for-all tournament, the semifinal in that. It's one of my most games I'm proud of. And then the other one would probably be my game with Zorkin and Shui in Season 7 versus the Lightning. We had a really crazy play. I have it recorded. It's a really crazy night play.
I think I broke some records. I think I have like the record for most stars by turn 10 is 3v3. I think I got 72 once on Kiku versus Bombers.
72?
I think it was an away game. We didn't even host it. We just got a ridiculous spawn. And then there's just been a lot of other games. Like any game I can end in like 4 turns is really fun. There was like a match we had to beat the Ronin to get into playoffs or whatever, and we like won in 4 turns. It was like amazing. So yeah, any game like that. I don't know if you remember, TNT's only sort of been on the Cosmonauts, I think, when we were like really good. I feel like during one of the few seasons, it was like we were very much underdogs and really winning for the first time. Those are always the best seasons. Like when you're really showing up and getting like one season we were like 0-4 and we made the playoffs. It was awesome.
Wait, when you played the Sparkies, was that season 6? Was that season 6 semis?
I forget. Yeah, I think so. That was a fun
One
season.
where you beat the Sparkies in like 5 or 6 turns.
Oh yeah, that was beautiful.
Was that season 6 semis or season 6 quarters?
I think it was season 6 semis. Sorry, yeah, season 6 semis.
Last question. Granted, you said you went away for a while, but what was your favorite part of the Polytopia fandom as a whole? It could be about the community and the server, the game.
I got pretty burnt out. Flame probably has a good answer to this too, but I got really burnt out of the game pretty quickly. As much as I love the competitiveness and being in a league that's as well built as Polychamps was, but the cliche answer is just like the Cosmonaut squad is so tight. They were some of my closest friends at the time. I don't know, man. I love those guys. It was a really good group, and I miss a lot of the players that either left or moved on, or we're just not. We try and keep up with each other, but everyone's busy. They have their own lives. It was just a really fun time, man. It was like a close community. Everyone was coming in from all over, and that squad was just my pride and joy. I love that team. That org was awesome. They can change the names though. I love the Cosmonaut name, but the squad's still there. Like the heart is still living on. So
I liked the culture. I liked the Mallards culture that like was founded through our rebuild. And there was a period, most of my rebuild, I had all Discord notifications on for that server. So I would get notifications for everything. It was a lot of notifications. And yeah, I agree with Prophet. It was just like a lot of really great friends and a lot of cool culture. And especially when that culture is kind of founded by your hard work, it makes it pretty cool. I never was a huge fan of the main server. Prophet was for a little while, I think, but then he got banned from that server.
I was a tribe leader.
I never really liked the server. I just didn't get along with the people on there. I just thought it was kind of a lot of kind of weird server, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's always a little weird, not gonna lie.
It felt like it was like a role play server.
It was really weird, man.
Well, now it's an art server.
Yeah, it was like a bunch of furries when I first joined.
Oh, well, the furries are still around general. According secondhand information. I'm not going to check. Go check for yourself if you dare.
Prophet can't, so.
Well, I was just saying that to anybody who's listening or reading.
I can check out main server.
You have any closing questions for us?
No, that's all I have.
Yeah, man, this is awesome. How do you want to close this out, guys?
Let's do a speed interview on TNT.
Yeah,
there's way too much stuff. We can cover a whole interview on my server, Friendly Polytopia, in like 30 minutes.
Whoa. Get the flag. Anyway, yeah, I think this was a super fun interview. Play with tempo, guys. Go win games.
Do you respect Prophet? That's my question.
After this interview, I definitely do now. I wasn't sure before. I didn't have enough information.
I feel like the Cosmo squad's a little culty, like in a good way.
It's loosened up a bit, but yeah.
Do you know who SPJ is? Is he still active?
Sounds familiar. Pretty sure
South
he
Penguin
is. SPJ Yoldo? No.
No, his name is South.
Oh, sorry, thinking of a different person.
Dude, and he said he was going to come back in season 8, and I haven't checked.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I guess if I ever come back on I don't know. It would be hard. I have to purposely lose games.
Shut up, bro.
I know. I can have me and me versus you. And I can put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
That's about it. Again, I'll have to go figure out how, if you I don't know where you post these, but I bet the server's going to crack up if this happens. I don't know if anyone even knows me still. Like, do people still
yeah, you're the guy that cheated.
All right, man. That about does it. We have some other stuff to get to, but it was super fun chatting with you, man.
Yeah, same.
Anyway.
All right. You guys will all talk to Prophet soon on one of his 17 ults, but you won't know it. Tntmasta, thank you for your time.
You want to see what happens? The legendary team leaders, Prophet and Flame. We can drop the handles.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm Flame. That's Prophet, and we're out of here.
I'm Prophet.
Peace.
That's awesome, Prophet.
As always, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, feel free to share it. For the text version, you can join my Discord in the description. I also have a YouTube channel where I play 1v1s and occasionally do tutorials. We'll be back next week. Bye!